Hello everyone, I greet in the name of God Almighty. My name is Apostle Silas, and today we have a very interesting video to react to. It's actually a reverse story of a sister. So she says that my reverse story converting to Islam from Judaism. Okay, have you heard about this? From Judaism. Okay, I believe that we are going to learn from her story. Okay, so I know it's a little bit long, but let's be patient. I believe that we're going to learn something from her story. So if today happens to be the first time of you checking out my channel, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and follow me on my Facebook and Instagram. And if you have any video you want me to react to, don't forget to drop it at the comment section and I'm going to check it out. So guys, before we get on to the video, I'm a theologian and I make this video not to discredit anyone's religion. This is basically for educational purposes, and I believe that at the end of this video we all are going to learn from this. So let's get down to this video and check this out.
Assalamu alaikum. So in this video I will be speaking about my rebirth story.
Okay.
For those of you who haven't seen me on TikTok, basically I was born Jewish to a Jewish family and I converted to Islam in 2018. So I get asked a lot of how I converted to Islam, of course, as most reverts get this question. So in this video I'll get into it. So, as I mentioned, I was born to a Jewish family. I was born in Montreal, Canada,
Okay.
to actually a
Canadian.
Hasidic family. So, up until I was 3 or 4 years old, up until my parents' divorce, I was raised Hasidic. And afterwards, once my parents got divorced, my mother took me and my siblings out of the Hasidic community, but we still remained Jewish, of course, and we still remained in the Jewish community. So, just a little background. My father is Ashkenazi Jewish. He is from Eastern. His family comes from Eastern Europe, and my mother is Mizrahi and Sephardic. And that means her mother was born in Morocco, and her father was born in Yemen. And my mother was actually born in occupied Palestine, or as Jewish people call it, Israel. So, growing up, I always considered myself Israeli, Jewish, Moroccan, Yemeni, Ashkenazi, all of the above, but definitely was held very close to my Jewish ethnicity, and still today I do consider myself Jewish ethnically, which people sometimes have difficulty understanding, but I still consider myself as an ethnic Jew who is religiously Muslim. So to start, I guess how it all began, it's definitely a long story. So sorry. So I went to a Jewish school my whole life, obviously up until the end of high school. So at that point, I was super Jewish, believed in God. I always believed in God, but I believed in Judaism specifically. I believed in the Torah. I believed in the teachings of Judaism, because I had a Jewish education and I held really closely to that. Since I went to Jewish school, I was also actually a staunch Zionist. I was super, super pro-Israel, and yeah, I held really closely to my religion and to, I guess, what I thought was my nationality, being Israeli. So my whole high school and elementary, I considered myself Jewish, and I practiced Judaism pretty religiously. My family, although they left the Hasidic community, we still remained like modern Orthodox or conservative. So we still dressed modestly, and we kept Shabbat, we kept all the holidays, we kept fully kosher, and I mean, we still do keep fully kosher in my family's home. So yeah, it was only until I graduated high school, once I left, the Jewish community, that I started meeting, non-Jewish people, and it all started basically when people would like start asking me questions about Judaism, and I would answer them, and sometimes I'd be met with challenges. They would like challenge me, but this. For example, I had a woman ask me about Shabbat, and I explained to her because the Torah says that we must cease work on the seventh day, because God created the world in 6 days, and the seventh day he rested. And she was like, yeah, but how come you can't use your phone, you can't do this, you can't do that, there are a lot of rules. And it started putting a lot of doubt in me. And I remember that question specifically from that woman. I still remember who asked me that. Her name was Mary, and I worked with her at a grocery store. And anyways, I still remember that, and it really like stuck with me. And at that point, like soon after, I started realizing that a lot of things that Jewish people were doing didn't make sense to me. And I was like, So I started distancing myself away from Judaism. For example, I started like sneaking my phone on Shabbat, so I wasn't like keeping Shabbat fully like my family was. So I'd be in my bed under my covers because I shared a room with my sister, and I'd be on my phone. So it kind of started like that. And like I started having like a bit of doubt in my heart about like what I was practicing. And then I like basically started distancing myself from God. So I lived like that for a few months. But then at one point I was like, I feel like alienated from God. I feel like I need to become closer to God. I feel like I needed to mend my relationship with God, because I was starting to feel, empty without God's presence in my life. So before going to school every day on the bus, I took a little Tehillim, which is a book of Psalms, which was written by the King David. And I started reading that, and I was like, you know what, hopefully that's going to, ignite my, my passion, my, like, in Arabic we say my iman, my faith. So I started reading that, and like it was really nice. It was a nice book. And I remember one thing in particular that I remember that kept reoccurring was how King David mentioned that he was prostrating in prayer to God. We prostrate in prayer to you, God. And it was mentioned over and over and over and over again. And that got me curious. So I was like, why don't Jews prostrate during prayer? So I googled it. I went to chabad.org, blah blah blah. I did a lot of research. Spoke to rabbis, but like it still did not like satisfy me. All the responses I was getting were not satisfactory to me. So I was like, this is weird. So as I was doing a lot of research, like I was reading Jews prostrate during prayer. The sect of the Karaite Jews came up. So the Karaite Jews are Jews who follow strictly the Torah, and they don't follow like the Talmud and other rabbinical texts or interpretations. And it was at that point that I realized that like Judaism, like standard modern Judaism that people practice today, is called rabbinic Judaism, because it is inspired, not inspired, but a lot of the rules and a lot of the holidays and the regulations that Jews practice today are from rabbis, from rabbinical interpretations, sages basically from the past. And it was at that point that I was like, that's strange. Like, but it also explained my questions. Like, why did we do this on Passover? Why did we do this on Hanukkah? Why did we do this on Rosh Hashanah? And it answered a lot of my questions. I was like, it makes sense, because they're following the interpretations of rabbis, and they're not following, like strictly, they're following the word of the Torah, but these specifications, even like the Shabbat, restrictions, don't come specifically, all of them, from Torah. So I was like, you know what? Maybe I should look into Karaite Judaism, because it made sense to me. They were following strictly the Torah. At that same time, I didn't really have any Muslim friends. I had one Muslim friend, but she wasn't, we never spoke about religion. But I knew some like Muslim people online that I would sometimes speak to. And one time I had like a whole conversation with like, it wasn't a friend, it was like a Muslim online friend that I never met. Actually, I never really met in real life. But anyways, we had a discussion, and we were sending each other videos about like, religion. And I saw this one video about like, debates between Muslims and Jews. And I started realizing at that point that Islam and Judaism are so similar. It was also at that point that I realized that Jews and Muslims believe in the same God, and also Christians, but that's not really relevant to this story. But up till now, to this point, I basically thought that, Muslims worshipped a different God. They worshipped Allah, which is a different God. I realized that Allah is actually just the name for God in Arabic, just like, Dieu is Arabic and French. So I was like, okay, they believe in the Torah, they believe in the Gospels, they believe in all of the Jewish prophets that, Jews believe in. and the only thing that they believe in more is the Prophet Jesus and the Prophet Muhammad as the seal of the prophets, and the Quran as the word of God. So basically, that's the only addition that it has to over Judaism. And I also, while I was Jewish, was like, oh yeah, Muslims stole our texts. They're just reusing. They're like copying our texts. That's really what I believed. And I realized that it wasn't copying Jewish texts. It was literally the same God. So God was continuing His message. It's the same message, and it just has, I guess, some like new information, some new tweaks. And I like explained it to myself as like, it's like an update. People don't like when I use that term, but in my head I was like, it's like an update to Judaism. So at that point I was like, okay, it's not a whole different thing. And I decided to actually start looking to Islam. And also when I was thinking about, when I was reading the Tehillim, and I realized that, he was saying, we prostrate in prayer to God, I did actually think of Muslims. So I was like, okay, that makes sense why Muslims pray to God. Pray to God, in like the way they do with like prostration, because that's what God wanted. That's what God says. And that's how Jews were praying up until a certain point, until the rabbis came along and said, we don't pray this way anymore. And I also remember, how like Muslims pray without their shoes on, and I was like, that makes sense, because a mosque is a holy ground. When you pray when you speak to God, you're speaking to someone so holy, so you have to respect them and take off your shoes. And I thought of, the time when Moses spoke to God, and in the burning fire, the Snebo el Ba'esh. I'm not sure exactly what it's called in English, but it's like the fire, and God said, please take off your shoes to speak to me, to address me. And this was holy ground, so he had to take off his shoes. And I was like, that makes sense. And it was like little things like this. At this point I still was not like actually considering being Muslim, but it was little things like that kept being added into, like, I kept realizing that I was like, okay, Islam makes sense, this makes sense. Until one point I was like, you know what, I'll read the Quran. And I started reading the Quran, and the Quran made sense. And I was like, like, there's nothing wrong with it. It's perfect. But at that point, I still wasn't like fully, convinced like I'm going to change my religion, because I felt like the thing that was holding me back most was honestly, I felt like I'd be abandoning all of my cultures, all of my traditions, everything that I once believed in would be like completely gone, just because, like, I'm changing my religion, and my religion was a fundamental part of me, of who I was. And I had a really hard time, drifting, like separating myself from that, and, accepting Islam. But at some point I realized that actually accepting Islam and being Muslim and practicing Islam would actually make me a better Jew. And I wasn't separating myself from Judaism. It was the same God. I was still being, it was still the same religion as the God of Judaism. So I came to realize that at some point. And it was just over time, like I said, many little things that I learned about Islam that made sense to me, even the modesty, and, how the modesty of, like, how Muslims dress. It made sense to me, and I'm like, my whole life, modesty made sense to me because I was raised Jewish, and it just all made sense to me. And I can't exactly remember what was the last drop that made me Muslim, but I do remember when I decided basically to become Muslim. It was Ramadan, it was 2017, and I was like, I'm gonna do Ramadan just want to see what it's like, so I was like, I'll do it. And as a Jew, I had fasted for like Yom Kippur, so it was like 25 hours for Yom Kippur, so I'm like, yeah, I can do this. And I was able to do this, and I was like, what, I want to fully immerse myself in it, so I'm gonna like pray too. So subhanallah, I actually learned to pray like really quickly. And I remember that I think it's in the Quran, or it says that God made this language easy for you to understand. And I was like, subhanallah, I was able to learn to pray so quick, and I never had even spoken Arabic. All I knew was like shukran and salam, like, honestly. So I started praying, and I remember one time I was in bed, I was like, okay, how do you become Muslim? And it said, you just need to repeat this word. It was the shahada, the sentence. So I sat in my bed, I was like, la ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah. And I said it, and I'm like, am I Muslim now? Like, I feel the same. So technically, I was Muslim since 2017, but I still at that point wasn't like fully like immersed in Islam. Like my heart wasn't fully there, so I don't necessarily consider myself fully Muslim at that point. And I still had some things to work on, abstain from certain things that Muslim must abstain from. But yeah, I was still starting to, think about Islam. I went to some Jum'ah prayers. And then it wasn't until later, it was in January, I met this girl online. And actually, it was funny. I was like posting a lot of stuff about Israel, like a lot of pro-Israel stuff. And she like was sent over by one of her other friends who like sent her over to talk to me and be like, why are you like supporting this, that? And anyways, we started talking, and then I told her, like, we started hanging out too. And then at one point, I told her, I'm like, you know what, I want to just convert to Islam. Like, I want to do it. I want to fully do it. So it was in January 26, 2018 that I actually converted to Islam. I took my Shahada, and that's when I consider myself fully Muslim. And yeah, that was pretty much it, how I went from being Jewish to being Muslim. I hope this video isn't too long, and I have like different things I can add, but I don't want to
It's
make this video
actually
too long.
long,
So if you have any questions, you can always ask me more
but
questions,
it's
and I
worth
will address
watching
these
anyway.
topics as best as I can. Thank you so much, and ma salama.
Whoa, that's a very interesting video. Watching this Jewish lady, of course, accepting Islam. Well, she's already a Muslim, and then we don't have anything in a sense to do about it. She has already made her own decision. We can only pray for her. Now, if you look at it, one thing I want to say concerning this video is all of us that are watching me are actually on the social media. And if you look at, in a sense, this Harvard story, you'll realize that at the course of it, she has been speaking to different people, the brother, and then also the lady that they start hanging out before she told her that she wants to make her final decision by fully become a Muslim, and then therefore she took her Shahada. The question is, while we are online, what do we actually discuss with people seriously? And this one go basically to my Christians brothers and then sisters, including even the Muslim. Seriously, what do we really discuss with our friends? What do we even discuss with people that we have or we do not know? If you look at it, of course, she has been having conversation with all these people, and then they find a way of talking to her about Islam, introducing Islam to her, and then also trying to send some videos to her to be able to understand what the religion is all about. The question is, ask yourself, throughout last month, were you able to discuss, you understand, your religion with someone? Either you're a Christian or a Muslim, I'm actually putting this question to you. Is for you to reflect on it seriously. Ask yourself, have I? Did I? And if I am not, what is stopping me from doing so? And I also want to encourage you that it's never too late. Seriously, it's never too late. You can still do it. Now that you are hearing me, you can still do it. For if you look at it in a standard, the Bible have already tell us that what he that what winded a soul is wise. For it is actually a wise person that winded a soul. And I'm making a reference to Proverbs chapter 11 from verse 30 for some who do not know. It is actually in the book of Proverbs. So others should not even think that it was actually in the gospel that all these things is found, but then it's actually in the Proverbs. So the question is, why can't you just do so? This is what we are supposed to be doing, right? As believers, we are supposed to be talking to people, right, about our religion. But you could see that we could be discussing some of the happenings in the world. We could discuss part of the politics. We could just talk about some of the policy that the government are making. We could talk about some kind of entertainment, some of the new songs they just released, or some of the parties that we went on, we enjoyed ourselves. But for real, like, when do you really have a time that you feel that even at the point of doing the party or the place of the party, to whether it's right or wrong, but then, because I know that some people can actually go there, not that because of they want to go and do anything bad, but then they find it as a medium to be able to speak to other people, right? The question is, are you be able to like kind of speak to people, you understand, about your religion? Seriously, ask yourself. And if no, then it is time for you to at least have a change of heart and begin to do things, you understand, differently. True to the activities of other people was able to make this young lady to take this very decision by taking the shahada. So it's not left for me and you. I'm also trying my best to do my own part, and I want you to also do your own part too, right? So that God can all bless all of us, so that one day, if fortunately like we end up finding ourselves in paradise, at least we should be able to like smile at one another and be happy that we are able to make it. It will be a thing of joy for me to see some of us, you understand. If we're able to like make it to paradise, to be a good thing. Like, there is nothing bad for all of us, you understand, to make it, right? And sometimes that's if we still have that opportunity, because you see, this very life is something that we have no control over. God can call me even this time that I'm even in the studio. God can call you anytime, right? And if God calls you, where are you going to find yourself? That is actually where the terrible questions, you understand, is. Where will I find myself? Where will you find yourself? And that's why we need to rededicate, you understand, our life to our maker, to our God. And we hope, and then seek for forgiveness. Seriously, seek for forgiveness of sin, and then change from our past, accept Him into our life, and sin no more, and be very obedient to His word. And then we should always pray that we can be able to make it to Jannah at the last day. A very interesting revert story by this very young lady. For some of you who know much about Judaism, you can kind of drop it at the comment section, because I think I have a limited knowledge, understand, about Judaism. Okay, all right. So this is the end of my video. If you like my reaction, you should like, share, and subscribe. And if you have any video you want me to react to, don't forget to drop it at the comment section, and I'm going to check it out. So you remain blessed, and I see you in my next video. Bye bye.